a financial figurine, an income profit manifesting machine. The only value they said I have is green. They called me a fiction, they called me extreme. They called me a pimp, as a matter of fact. They painted me violent.
First and foremost, peace to the world, peace to you, peace to the ancestors. I wanted to do a video on parental alienation for many reasons. For awareness, to have accountability, a record. I wanted to speak for the record to the world, speak my voice. We have a voice, so let it be heard. For networking, growth, understanding, clarity, healing. So I wanted to do lots of this YouTube series that I did with Rad Dad on my experience in the family courts, and so parental alienation being one specific dynamic of many that I've had to face, and that I found value in dissecting and speaking on, and much less raising awareness about and trying to have positive solutions to change. Parental alienation being an obvious one in my case because it was so severe, and so having a passionate personal interest and greater interest for the collective of families. Family values have been open that I think family is a crucial foundation to the stability and the positive foundation of society at large. And so knowing that there's something going on like these family courts that we have right now in America, it's 2017, and speaking first and foremost about my personal experience, first-hand knowledge, and then what I've subsequently learned, especially through all the studying and attention, once you're aware of something, much less have a invested interest, learning about parental alienation, narcissism, borderline, cluster B personalities, much less the corruption of the courts, family courts, adversarial courts, adversarial attorneys, systems that are designed to fight and cost you money and resources, and ultimately in family courts, in many cases, for the breakdown and further damaging and exasperating damage and grievance and arguments and discordance, adding fuel to the fire, hands down. And so much less and more importantly, adding pain and damage and suffering, and when we get into parental alienation, as I've learned, serious damages that can happen to children of either gender, personality damages, social developmental damages, to just the statistics of the impacts and consequences of the fatherless families, fatherless households, and fatherless children. Obviously, and I think we can advocate and should advocate that it's either gender, missing one of the parents of either gender, severely detrimental to children, and severely advantageous to advocate for and facilitate and nurture and try to construct the two-parent household, or just two-parent separate co-parenting or even parallel parenting systems that we can. And so that's what I'm an advocate for. Simple solutions that I think we can discuss and implement very quickly and easily if we are in agreement around that. And so that's first and foremost my solution to this whole thing, is a shared 50-50 standard for fit parents in this country and in this nation and ultimately in the states. So I think that by itself would eliminate much of the potential for the power discrepancy and the ultimate damage that an alienating parent can have on the family and the relationships and the children ultimately. So 50-50 shared custody in separated households is, I think, not just a solution but a fundamental right when we get into what is equal protection under the law. What the tender year doctrine did to move the whole momentum from all the children going into the father households where the fathers paid the bills and then got the children to have the bills and the children, to the tender year doctrine when all the children were going to the mothers but the bills stayed with the fathers, and then starting to eliminate the fathers. I also believe that, I understand that to come off the Duluth Model, which started to incorporate the same in domestic violence cases and cases where police were being called to households where it was standard just to default on the side of the female and remove the male for right or wrong without maybe knowledge or having some sort of hearing on scene where somebody is proven right, guilty, wrong, anything like that. That the Duluth method started to incorporate some of the ideals that, if we're in these conversations, especially about third wave feminism, social justice warriors, and the like, of the discrepancy that now I think we're seeing, or have probably seen for a very long time, in family courts specifically, where it comes to male versus female relationships, and ultimately orders and support through the system in the courts. So moving to the tender year doctrine, where all the children started to go with the women, and in this case where we're talking about parental alienation syndrome specifically, or just, I understand the debates. I'm new to all this personally, so I'm diligent. So going out and studying, I'm invested. When you're a parent who's gone through this and who's had their children taken away for no good reason, when you get into parental alienation and typical, or at least common cases, in my case, false accusations and the rate of increased false accusations during separation and divorce. Mine, we weren't married, but it was still a separation of our romantic relationship and leading into false accusations and then continued parental alienation to this day. So, of the many things that we have to deal with parental alienation and seek to overcome, that's why we get into all this. And so the difficulty is difference in opinion, that there's still a conversation being had, and especially when you're on the alienating side, at least in my case, being the parent who's alienated, it's been pulling teeth, not just with the courts to get any recognition of tangible, simple things that are not just alienating but are malicious and just not good for children. Like, it doesn't even have to be these technical mental health diagnoses and words, but they're helpful and in often, as I understand now, learning about cluster Bs and narcissism and borderline personality, antisocial personality disorders, things like that. Why this is also very beneficial, and in my personal experience, being somewhat skeptical of the mental health diagnosis book for things like depression, and just having a history of opposing the SSRIs and the serotonin inhibitors, and seeing what we've seen with the shooters and what these antipsychotics do to some of these children, or the ADHD diagnoses, and especially when you get into the war against little boys and males and masculinity in general in this culture. and eradicating rough and tumble play with boys and all this kind of stuff that are, whether you want to call it feminizing the boys or emasculating the boys, and emasculating and feminizing the men as well. These are huge conversations in society that are getting more to the forefront, as we see, especially with the gender and identity politics, that are needing to be discussed holistically, lawfully, with mental health diagnosis and whatnot. My whole point on that is I'm not trained in mental health. I'm trained in common sense and feeling like I'm a fairly intelligent person. I may not be a genius or Mensa Society or something like that, but I think we're all ignorant in massive areas of life, and many of us are fairly specialized and knowledgeable in tons of specifics and aspects of our specialty and focus, so or our degrees or anything like that. But not that I am of the mindset that you need a Western, secondary or master's, having all the degrees to be educated or to be wise or have significant value to add to the roundtable conversation on all these topics. But learning about these things specifically with narcissism, borderline personality, especially with my case, having no prior understanding to any of this stuff, and then learning through the YouTube channels and the narcissistic awareness community in general, helped change my life, because it was one of those things I just had no information, and so seeing every trait in my case, as I feel, that it was down the line, like, oh, yep, all from everything from the flying monkeys to the triangulation to the hoovering, all the things that you can learn about narcissism. That was a rabbit hole in its own, which, if you understand parental alienation, the tie and significance to narcissistic personalities or borderline, I'm not sure if antisocial personalities as well, but that cluster B, people that can't look at themselves, can't take responsibility themselves, much less show no empathy, and things like when you get more serious into sociopaths and psychopaths and things like that, and the different levels of what type of sociopathy you could have, it's, besides being super terrifying and scary and painful in my life, also very fascinating, and because I've been impacted personally by it, worth spending time and understanding, obviously, because I still go through it with my case, trying to get more time with my daughter and get any recognition for what seems blatantly obvious in my case, but also, I think as a greater impact on society, when we know the family courts are so damaged and there's just spending so little time in Title 4D and child support when you get into all that craziness by itself, much less just contracting your inalienable rights to begin with, that I don't have equal protection as a human being that had a child to exercise and pass down my teaching and my love and my culture and everything that is my paternal side, with me being a man, of this, my daughter's genetics and life and upbringing. So I think that's an inalienable right. I thought that went without saying, but then to go through this experience and have another human being go to these lengths to try to not just deny it, but create just the type of drama and violence and unnecessary chaos that literally would be abusive and harmful on a child was hard for me to comprehend in general. I mean, in my case, the mother of my child, she lied about everything, so I was in the dark about so much, from her career to traveling around the world to do photography. It was all a hustle, and so I grew up on the streets with hustlers, so it's like being one who's not like square and raised in a disconnected, sheltered atmosphere that knew colorful people that really didn't have good intentions and did people dirty, and had no problem, like, from just stealing to getting one up on the next person to, jacking people, the whole spectrum. And what I've dealt with in this case, when you're dealing with children, it gets back to even Tupac and thug code and things like that, like no women and children, street code, things that at least I saw like some level of ethics, like that you could see in even gang culture and gang warfare and gang ethics. The gangs were created to protect the neighborhood. It wasn't what the media portrays it out to be, the senseless post-crack epidemic, crack affects fatherless homes that we now know where things have deteriorated into such chaos. I digress. But when we're talking about the breaking up of these families and the fatherless homes and intentional people that would alienate, so you got the two sides, the parent that would alienate another parent and just truly not put the child before themselves, because especially when you get into the personality disorders, these people can't. It's as I understand, and I'm a neophyte, I'm a newbie in the years that I've put into just now trying to understand the complexity just of narcissism first and foremost for me, and then the cluster Bs, and then the borderlines, and then parental alienation, because I'm also intertwined with the court system, and that's separated from this other path in the road, which is the court system, which is the conflict of interest, the adversarial nature of the court process in general, for the two attorneys to be fighting and have not just financial interest, which is not in the best interest of the child, but interest in just winning, in my case of being dirty and manipulating facts and just truly not even being a seeker of truth. And I've already offered my suggestions of get rid of the two attorneys, having one attorney that's like a mediator. All these attorneys go to become judges anyways, so have one attorney that doesn't have a vested interest. That's my problem. If I went to get her attorney, who'll do anything, if I would have went and got him first and paid him the money, he'd do all the same shady, low-level, unethical stuff to win for my side and advocate for me. And I think that's a travesty. That's adversarial. And so there's such simple solutions we could do to getting rid of there being an interest, like a reward. You get a reward for winning. That's not what we're shooting for. With fighting, we're shooting for harmony and getting rid of discordance. That's communion. Communion is the meeting of the minds, and so that's obvious when you see it. That's how I feel in my case. It's obvious when we're seeing who's fighting, and especially the amount of intense legal aggression that I don't have an attorney, that this attorney is doing toward me, and just what he's got to be billing her, like, I think is unethical. We've been fighting, this is the 4th summer with almost non-stop litigation. My daughter is only 3. And so that's for her whole life have been in litigation. It's so unethical, and that's part of the reasons to do these videos. Nobody's taken a tally on me. I'm not like going into some statistic of a case of validated parental alienation or a ton of things that we're trying to separate from, ultimately to create a healthy society, healthy families, healthy self, starting with self, family, community, nations, world, right? So So much of that it's not 1% of what goes on in these family courts. Love, there's no smiles, there's no accountability even for detail to evidence, like arbitrary and capricious. I don't want to know any of these legal terms. I don't have a lawyer. I go and study all this stuff because of love, because you love your children. And the attorneys that I had had so little heart, passion-based conviction for my child and my relationship with my child. I didn't hire devils. My attorneys, I had a couple too that were devils, definitely, and stole money and faked bills and double billed and confusing books and just unethical legal advice and just bad people. Those people I fired. I don't want an attorney like she has that'll do anything. Which is the irony, because out of everything I've learned in my whole family court experience is, if you want to win, that's my advice. Being honest, it doesn't help you. It hinders you. It's like the rules with the police. Anything you say can and will be used against you. Can and will be used against you. That's it. It won't be used for you. It can't be used for you. Go watch the YouTube video, Why Not to Talk to Police, by the attorney and the officer, on how there is nothing positive that can come from it. Only negative can come from it. Now, I don't think that's an absolute. That's not totally true, because in the spectrum of the hustle of even how police have room to bargain and deal, much less to blackmail and really do dirty, we know there's a spectrum of I could gain, especially not just from snitching, and going against street code and things like that, but even just being cooperative and being peaceful. Talking, we don't owe them anything, even to give them ID. We have to tell them something, that we're peaceful, acknowledge yourself as something, but our sovereign rights, our independent rights, our inalienable rights are that we're free. Unless am I under arrest? Am I being detained, right? That's what we're taught to say. If I'm not, I don't even owe you a conversation. If there's a charge against me, let it be brought against me. Otherwise, we're free and independent. We have inalienable rights. I'm sorry, I know that digresses, but it ropes back to the parental alienation. If my inalienable rights, regardless of my gender, race, creed, all this, religious, anything, if I'm in the 80-20, I'm not extreme on any other side, that I'm a fit parent, I'm just in that realm. You may not think I'm the best. Who cares? It's none of your business. It's none of my business. If you're not a danger and a threat to the child, your own children that you produce, we have that right. You may not like it, but that is our right. It exists. Creator endowed all animals with that right of procreation. That's how we're here today. Eugenics, that's a scary thing. You get on the topic of trying to control who and who can't produce offspring. That's what they did to our cultures. That's what they did to Aboriginals and indigenous, so-called natives, so-called Indians in America on Turtle Island. We're not from India. But that's what they did with the sterilization program. So we still have genetic pain and trauma. Not just pain and trauma, but realizations today that there's still a vested interest in genetic survival of different people on this planet. And it's not just genetic survival, it's cultural survival, obviously. It's the teaching down of our languages and our culture and our traditions and our ceremonies and our philosophies, our habits and our mannerisms, our beliefs. That's what I'm being denied. I have 2% time. I have 15. I don't even really have 15 days a year because they're not cooperating even with that agreement. So prior to that, I had 8 days a year with my family in Colorado, in my home, with my child, to her 98% time. Not 98, sorry, 357 days a year, but 98% to my 2%. That's such, for two parents that are fit, that love their child, that should have the right to pass down their culture, their languages, their beliefs, their celebrations? What if I'm not Judeo-Christian? So all the Christmases and these things that they just map out on these calendars with Christmas and Thanksgiving. You know what Thanksgiving, that topic, is to indigenous people in America? And that's just the holiday that you're going to divvy up so that, you know, my child can go there and celebrate Thanksgiving, and then while some indigenous people are fasting on Thanksgiving so they remember the history of this country, and we have just such a different, and that doesn't even have to be warring different, especially in my case with a woman who's not sharing. I have no idea what her culture is. I have no idea who she is, because everything was a lie. There was a hustle, which to me should be so significant, especially in the understanding of 4 summers of litigation, but also the blatant parental alienation, the blatant discrepancy in who has power, who doesn't have power. I've never been in a position of power. So with power comes responsibility, and yet all the scrutiny is on me as the man. The fine microphone is always on me. The scolding and the letdown and the frustration is all directed at me. I've spent over $100,000, my family, my parents' retirement fund, just to try to get to, we got 8 days a year. We spent $100,000 for 8 days a year. And they're looking at me sideways like I'm the problem here. Like I'm not getting out to where she fled to enough, which is Oregon. So everything's run out of Oregon. So in my case specifically, it's just one after another. It was a recipe for the worst case scenario for parental alienation. From her going to Oregon, the UCCJEA, and them claiming jurisdiction just because she fled there right before delivering and had a baby in another state. And then they get jurisdiction. Neither of us lived there ever, had no attachment or affiliation with this state. And that's why it gets into, how are these courts getting jurisdiction? What is subject jurisdiction? What is personal jurisdiction? Do they have both of these? Like all of what ends up being, how did they get all this domination over us as humans, as parents, as men or women? And so that's why we're still fighting. That's why I'm doing a video like this. To maybe just be one more person. I go and I watch some of these videos and I'm like, what can I offer? Like, you go watch, excuse me, you go watch some of the psychologists, and even when it's your case and you're in it and you see where it is with, they're just fighting getting these diagnoses in the mental health books, so that then the shrinks and the counselors or the parental coordinators or the parental evaluators, I've had both in my case. I spent $20,000 on a parental evaluator who said he was a forensic psychologist specializing in personality disorders. He didn't catch not a single thing with parental alienation, much less narcissism or cluster Bs or borderlines. This was a woman who made up fake rape stories, multiple, and then accused me of so many accusations, from domestic violence, rape or attempted rape, threats of murder, child abuse, everything you could think of. I mean, in the court this summer, they came in and said, we have no problem with him, he's a good man. This is the parenting. We recommend 15 days a year. That's what the change they were seeking. And somebody that they were accusing of attempted or of rape, threats of murder, child abuse and woman abuse, horrendous, crazy stuff. Like, you don't go from that to like, no, he's a good man, I'll trust my child with him. That's why my story's never changed. Is like, I'll never be alone with her without public. That's why I wanted exchanges to be at the police station. That's why I wear the spy cams. They know I wear the spy cams, because I'd never want nothing to not be recorded. When you're accused of beating and raping and saying you're gonna kill somebody, choking a woman and a baby out. Those are things like, I went through an 8-month domestic violence investigation as a brown melanated man with a white female. I mean, think about how that probably was. It's not like they were like, yeah, he probably didn't do it, or weren't skeptical. Like, it was every day there's going to be a warrant out to go for domestic violence. In my case, she went and marked up herself. That's such a scary thing. That's conviction. That's what the detective said to me. You know how many cases we have where somebody would fake, like they go mark themselves up? Not a lot. I was scared. That I still am. I'm terrified of this woman, of the power of what she can do, what perception is, what tendencies are. The tendencies, whether it's the Duluth Model and that tendency to back a woman, or third wave feminism and the attack against masculinity in men and boys. I don't know. Or if it's parental alienation, and that's what I've seen even just on YouTube with the anti-parental alienation. Like, parental alienation doesn't exist. Like, there's people that are skeptical that human beings would alienate somebody else when they're mad. The things I've seen said 80% of divorces, of separation, there's at least some minimal form of parental alienation. Doesn't mean it's parental alienation syndrome, or you're dealing with borderlines or cluster Bs or people with personality disorders, but that of course there's a natural tendency of people when they're angry to get petty, mean, vindictive, and resentful, lash out, do hateful, hurtful things. We all have a shadow self, right? It's like, that's what makes these people special, because they never even acknowledge one bad thing, especially somebody like this who made up fake rapes. And I'm not just the ones about me, but when it came out, all these cases before, that she had claimed the same thing, and fake court hearings. And so to have these mental health professions just overlook that, or even go to protect her like she needs help, which she does, but that it doesn't have to do with at the cost of and the detriment of me, much less my relationship with my child. That's especially when you get in parental alienation, what needs to be protected, especially what you hear the psychologists saying now, where you truly need to separate the child from the alienating parent and break that conditioning, especially the earlier the better. My daughter is 3, so it's the same thing. Mine was just a recipe for disaster, to have a child so little that they weren't going to take away from the mother. And so for her to be able to use these things that then, of course, establish the only bond that there is with the person who gave birth to you. That's the first and foremost relationship. Like, that I don't acknowledge and support that as a male dealing with parental alienation is so very difficult, because that's how I'm painted, is who would try to take a child away, especially an infant or under 1-year-old, 2-year-old, or now 3-year-old from a mother. Like, I'm looked at like it's devilish and wicked to even fathom that, much less suggest it. And in my case, I truly from my heart believe it's so bad that I've suggested it from birth, when the first signs of how extreme this woman I thought I knew was, which was the talk of suicide and extreme depression and crazy, honestly, give thanks to Scott in the book recommended Letting Go or Getting Rid of Crazy as not a degradation in a way to just belittle people that have these serious problems, because it's not about that. Like, of course I spend time working out my pain and anger and resentment, which all stems from fear, but that's not why I use crazy. I use crazy because it's so fitting. And I've never met somebody. That's when I talked about the deviance of crack and fatherless homes and even gang culture and street code and things like that. I feel like I've never met a human being like this person. Somebody that, I don't know who she is, you know. There were so many lies, and that's, for me, it just took a long time to come to peace with that, to really internalize and digest, like, bedding down and laying and sharing your home. And, like, my other daughter was 4 when she came into our lives, and so the relationship they built, that was over 4 years, you know. So it was 4 years of somebody, like, lying about all the major aspects of their life, while in my interpretation grooming me, which I don't understand why, to have a child, you know. There's still confusion I have with my personal case of, like, was she ever trying to be together? Was it to get a child and leave? Just certain things I personally don't have answers to in my case, but for whatever circumstance led to her fleeing before our daughter was even born, and it's still being a battle of get back together with me, this can all go away. Like, that was still happening in my case, but understanding, especially in my position of learning things, especially that came out in court, and using depositions and sworn testimony and things like that as opportunity to try to get answers, and understanding, to piecing together what even happened, because it's such a whirlwind for people that go through extreme parental alienation, of trying to secure your grounds with understanding what's happening, with getting a good defense, with being totally ignorant to the rules of the game, especially in the court system. And so that's been since before my daughter was born, now my whole life, and continuing to this day, to where our current reality is just right before the weekend. It's Labor Day weekend 2017, just getting all the paperwork of just continued litigation, and knowing what we've spent, you know, we couldn't even consider getting a lawyer again, just because I'm so in debt. They hit me with a $50,000 lien for the hearings I had last summer, because of the paperwork I put in, that they weren't to proper procedure, and they were under more the Moorish and the sovereign and constitutional claims of, I'm not a subrogee, I'm not an obligor, I'm not a debtor, I'm not even contracted with you in any way, shape, or form. And it's such a scary path to go down, much less the talk of property. That's proper to my person. My child is my property, like, which is slavery talk, and how they try to spin all that, which that's how I feel. Like, of course my child is proper to me before anybody else, to me and my child's mother. We are her. We brought her into existence, so she, of course, is our property, not in the sense of slavery, in the sense of obligation, of our obligation to maintain and uphold and provide for what we created, our creation, our child. And so that's why when I started reading all of these struggles and the various methods people have used to both articulate their learned philosophies, just from going through the process, and okay, what does this mean? How am I in this position? To the potential solutions, and what are people doing? And that's why we have videos like this, and so many of the things you see online, not just from these child support gurus who I just think it's tough too, because again, all these gurus out there trying to allegedly help the men for child support, and for someone like me, like what I've gone through, I want to help anybody in this position. I don't care what their gender is. I understand with child support it's very male specific, statistically speaking, but it's not about making a profit. I never want anybody to go through what I've gone through. And again, I get like, I'm not trying to do all the work for somebody or listen to everybody who's in my position just vent and put all their weight onto you. We can't, that's not sustainable either. So it's not about that and being everybody's savior, but it is about like, what are we going to do that fixes it? And it's not about selling paperwork to other people so that single cases can try stuff, a lot of which is not working. because we know that in each court, the law and the rule and the statutes, not just the statutes, but their understanding and respect and acknowledgement of even constitutional rights and law and superiority, or any of these things that we're trying to bring to the table, they're not being abided by or acknowledged or respected all over the place in all 50 states. And so that's why we're seeing these movements. That's why we're seeing all these various claims for remedies for men and movements for transformation of the courts in general. And then you got the MGTOW movements and the MRAs and these social conversations that I feel like really need to be had, that are our ultimate reflection of the falling apart of the families again. And so that's why just having people's intentions in the courts, it'd be so obvious and easy to see. When you see love, you see people that care, have compassion. That's why the narcissism, this cluster Bs and all, I see that in the courts, especially obviously with these alpha males and the attorneys and the type of demographic and mindset that becomes these super attorneys and things like that. This attorney that I face off with, like, he's another one. I've just never met another human being that speaks to people that way and says things like, this isn't sibling time, this is parenting time. Like, he doesn't care at all about my child's half-sister, my other daughter. Like, for people to speak openly like they don't even care about other children, then that's the worst thing he's done. And it's just one of so many things over the past 4 summers, the first 3 years of my daughter's life, that are unconscionable. That's how I feel. Like, it's not even just how can you go home and look at yourself, it's how could society stand by and allow what's happened in my case, which I don't think is that unique, to happen. And that's why, is it because people aren't informed? And is that why we're going to turn to the YouTube and any means that we can help bring awareness and conversation to not just parental alienation, but the problems of these courts and the family courts and, the greater courts in America in general? Our structure and our legal system is flawed. And it's not just to demonize, it's to offer solutions that can help and get rid of people that are profiting and benefiting consciously, especially from right now the things that have nothing to do with the best interests of the child or the best interests of the family. Because it's still the airplane metaphor. Like, it's not just about the best interest of the child. Of course we love and care about the children. That's why we manifested them. But like in the airplane crashing, when you put the oxygen on yourself first, because you're the adult, because you're the conscious sentient being who hopefully has maturity and wisdom to guide everything, that you want to be the one providing, protecting, guiding, loving the child. So you save self first and then save child, that it's also about the best interest of the parents. What a goofy thing to be so extreme and one-sided, to just even say something like it's just the best interest of the child, and deny a holistic approach to all of life that we need to approach holistically. Health, mentalism, education, knowledge, everything, skill, craft. Much of life is a holistic management of balance of mind, body, soul. So, to see how little of that exists in these people, that in their mind, like, they think they exemplify prestigious wisdom and knowledge and understanding of the law, which they then believe is an extension of the understanding of greater society and what makes anything work, which is, it's just not what you see at all in the proper procedure in these courtrooms, but not just in the procedure, in the hearts and in the eyes and in the words and the actions of these people. And so with the type of claims I've had against me and the judgments and the stereotypes I feel that I've gone through, and yet zero actual interaction, and like, these people don't know anything about my life. I mean, they've never been to my home. Well, the parental evaluator did. I mean, he came to my home, but that's not he had such little to do with even the actual hearings. That guy wrote his huge report, which the judge read, and said very little directly under testimony. And so and even the time he spent with me, which is a conversation in itself, because the authentic time I spent with that man, I talked so little with him for the amount that he wrote in this report, dissecting my psychology and our psychology and the dynamics of our relationship and the history of our relationship so matter-of-factly after spending no time with us. He spent 15 minutes with me and my daughter watching her play on the floor. It was silly, like, to think, because true abusers like to not be able to just do that, like that you're going to learn anything if you're looking for potential dangerous people, or what people's real skill set are with children and what they bring, what their value is as a father or as a mother or just as a human. So the whole thing to me, I say a joke, but that belittles the seriousness of how little insight and true understanding and authentic knowledge I felt the parental evaluator had. And now that I'm under the parental coordinator, which is slightly different criteria, but still just trying to get somebody to look at, like, talk with me. And this is a mental health professional, and the amount of interaction and attention I have is why at this point, after the paperwork we got last week, we wrote that to her and the judge. It's like you want us to throw my hands up, and that's what I feel like doing, because I'm out of options. I don't have money, not just for an attorney, but even just to drive back to Oregon for another court hearing that we're looking at. And that's besides that for me to prove myself, I have to drive out and exercise parenting time in Oregon, halfway across the country. And I don't fly, and they know I don't fly. That's my problem with the parental alienators, because she used all that against me. Like I say, it was a recipe for disaster. So she knew, like, getting away from where I was, I don't fly, and I couldn't just fly out to visit, and she could be like, oh, come visit anytime, and have that public persona of, like, I'm such a good human, and I would allow him to have any time he wants. He just doesn't help, and he doesn't come out here ever. And she paints I'm a single mother and I'm a victim. Not that I have this willing, loving man who would do anything to provide just like he does for his other child, but that I've been denied, I've been alienated, and then I have the court system. It's like, to lawfully tell somebody they can't exercise parenting time, that I can't have any time with my child to provide what she needs, and then to say, you don't provide anything. And so the mother provides everything, so of course you have to pay her. That's what child support is. You don't provide it, but I say, but you're lawfully telling me I can't. You're inhibited. You're saying, if I do, I'll be punished. I'll break an order that's punishable by the highest cost of the law, being arrested, going to jail, losing my relationship with the family I do have access to. So that's wild. You tell me by violence and force that I cannot see my child, and then you punish me and tell me I have to pay you with debt, currency, usury, fiat money, private money that puts all of us in debt to the baby I'm not raising. And so to have none of these people, like, even have parental alienation as a part of the conversation, is why I guess I feel like I want to be one more person to bring awareness to it and say, I can tell you wholeheartedly, if you know me or if you don't, that's what I believe I feel I've gone through extreme parental alienation, where it's malicious, and the degree of lying and the degree of alienation is so severe that if it was up to the mother, I would have no existence and no part in this child's life. I would be absolutely and completely removed. And so, what protection do I have? And what do people think? And do they want to be involved at all? And what can I do to be a benefit to the collective, to any form of alienation. And so those people that say parental alienation doesn't exist, it's something that abusive men or abusive parents use to women, or the other parent. The arguments I've had are from women, that it's something that's made up by men who are abusive, who want to use this construct as a means to pull the baby away from the good parent. And so I don't care which parent is being malicious. I'm against malicious parents that try to do shady, selfish, damaging stuff, period, that don't put children first. And like, I feel like that's usually pretty easy to see in personalities and actions and tendencies and patterns. And so just a little bit of due diligence, regardless of if we think we have the solution of how then we deal with that. And I get that the law is a complicated thing, and that's what it's trying to navigate in theory, not at all in practice. In my experience in Oregon, I've acknowledged Colorado judicial system and the positive things I have to say, where there are things positive to say about Colorado and how different it is than Oregon. But what's happening in Oregon, and I know it's not unique to Oregon, but it's unconscionable, it's unfathomable, and I don't know what I need to do to change it. So if that's legislation, raising awareness, getting signatures, having discussions with women, bridging this gap between the male-female dynamics, however we got to heal families, whatever your family looks like, that's what I'm for. I'm for peace, and I'm for love, and I'm for communion and patience. I try to serve. My whole existence was my band, and which was about more than music. It was the movement. The freedom movement is what the project is. And so to raise conscious health and conscious awareness and conversation between cross cultures and genders and age and everything else that is diverse about the communities that we hopefully reside in, and trying to get some healthy platform where we can interact with each other and share, and more importantly inspire each other to be better, to have better understanding of ourselves and of each other. All that is so far from now what I've dealt with having my name dragged through the mud, having some of the worst accusations for that being my passion, and trying to be a good human being, to then being called a woman beater and a child beater and, a pimp, and so much craziness, which is why it's easy to say, what do you care about what other people say? But when you don't just look at social ramifications in your personal lives and in your profession, financially, all across the board, and much less legally, where obviously you beat a woman and a baby, or you rape somebody, or you try to kill somebody, there's consequence. You go to jail. That's free white and 21. You send the black man to jail, and you pass go. You don't say peace to anybody. And that was a scary thing to look at, terrifying, and to look at. How do we deal with that, and what are the judgments and the ramifications? One, for people that do that are persecutors of violence and domination and violation of the non-aggression principle. But also in this case, and on the flip side, and when we're talking about false accusations of things like rape, and what's happening with some of these women in these court systems, and the Duluth Model, things like that how do we appropriately deal with, and how do we even right now currently understand things like false claims for violence, rape, and otherwise? And regardless, I don't care what the percentage is. I don't care if my case is unique with somebody that really would make up that kind of stuff. Or if it's far more common, which is my understanding, is that this is a very common thing, especially in cases of separation and divorce. And so, what do we do? What's the appropriate level of response for somebody that's willing to say, this other human raped me, and try to get them prosecuted and convicted, and push it to that degree? And in my case, going on 4 summers, 3.5 years. That's beyond slander of your character. And so it's the same thing, where are you going to fight? And I've been in family court. I don't even think about charges of slander and suing people, suing judges, suing her, all this stuff. I don't even have much fight when it comes to the courts left in me. And so that's why I'm doing more stuff like this, because I don't know if I'm going to keep up with the paperwork and 100% of the energy that this attorney has to throw at me. It was 3.5 years. It's just never stopped, and he's getting paid. Why would he stop? Like, there's a nest egg, when it's like that kind of money just keeps coming in, and you can argue about everything, and the check just keeps clearing. They sued me for $100,000. I can't imagine what he's made even since. Just that kind of money. And the lack of the level of scrutiny against these attorneys and just the system and the process in general, and the opportunity to make profit and the conflict of interest, and not to mention his conduct in the hearings and outside of the hearings, things that the judges see. And I've cued him in. I start copying him on emails just because I'm not an attorney, so I'm not going to go completely by process. I'm not going to speak without emotion, and like it's not my child that you're talking about, not my family, and not my whole life that you've changed. Like, that's why I go to these hearings and look these people in the eyes and say, you're going to judge me and you're going to do this to my life. I want to face you as you do it. I don't know how they do it. I still don't know how they do it. I can't imagine. That's still part of what I'm trying to process, which is negligence or complicit. Is the judge, for example, is he a conspirator? Does he conspire in, just truly eliminating me as a father? Like, I work so hard for the 15 days a year. She's 3. Like, there's no talk of incremental increases at all. Like, the things they're proposing right now is that after the next year, when I get the 15 days of years this next year, it doesn't repeat. It just ends. And if I want more, then I can petition and go back to court. And that we have to litigate for even the 15 days to continue past a year. That's insanity. Like, why would any judge or anybody just not comment somewhere? Not say, well, why would we do that? Are we not trying to build family and build healthy relationships with two parents? Just basic common sense stuff, basic family values. I don't know how that translates to every ordinance and statute that they're trying to reference as the so-called law. But that's just common sense family values, and you don't hear of any of that, much less the last hearing, the amount of evidence that I had to try to gather. 6 months of denied phone calls with my daughter. I get 3 FaceTime calls a week, and I don't get any of them, no communication. It's just alienation everywhere you can, because she has all the power. And so I have to document everything and video every call and do everything everybody would say, like, oh, you have to if you want to prove have any leg room. But in my case, that's why we're about done, because I documented for the whole year, And then it's like to have judges that they don't want to look at anything. They truly don't want to know. They don't want to put the time in. You're burdening them just to even be there with your drama and the heaviness of the conflict. You don't see passion. I don't see passion from the judge. Like, I love the law. I love what I'm doing. I love trying to regulate and get the best case, moral, ethical, and lawful outcome for all of our complexities in this society. Yay, let's go to work and problem solve this. I got so much wisdom and so much experience. I'm a seasoned lawyer, practicing attorney, now judge, elected or appointed, whatever. Like, where's your passion? Where's your, fire? That's scowls and, angry school teachers and wardens and the bad parents. I want to punish you. Why are you interrupting the game? Why are you interrupting Mama while she's working? Like, that's not who we're supposed to be leading these courts and making these family changing orders and decisions. Buddhas and prophets and sages, healers, elders, wise keepers of the flame and of the spirit. That's who's supposed to be like, you want to pass judgment on family, on people that are in crisis, on people that need help, people that need restructuring and reorganizing. We need high character people. So that goes without saying. That's the foundation. And then when you get to education, I mean, understanding parental alienation and the draw, especially if you have power, if you've been given power through an order, through sole custody or something like that, like in my case in Oregon, that's the law. Like if two parents go to court, that's the law. They can't even do joint custody legally. One parent has to have sole custody. You can have shared parenting, but it's going to be sole custody. It's insane. Like, how is that not just a default violation of not just inalienable rights, but what we should be striving for, which is shared 50-50. Period. As much and as close to that as we can get. As quick to that from birth as we can get. I was a stay-at-home parent as a father, so to me the understanding that a child can bond and be totally comfortable and learn and nurture and grow and be healthy with the father, especially in those infant early years. My daughter's mom went back to work at 6 weeks. Bless her for being the bread maker, and us kind of being reversed, but that's why that was my setup for my second child as well. That's just the family life I have and that I chose. Whether that's emasculated or not, that's the role that I have passion for with my music career and just being home and not having the traditional 9 to 5. I had that flexibility and desire, intent. That was my intention. So I see how my eldest daughter is. She flourishes. Our dynamic is great because both parents put child first. I have my eldest daughter's mom's one of my best friends. So I have a prime example of functioning co-parenting. With the other mom, I don't even do parallel parenting because I don't have any time. I have to wait 4 months. From my last parenting time, from the court hearing to the next time I'll get her in Colorado, it'll be 8 months till I can exercise my first time in this year for once every 4 months, 3 times a year. So I just want people to know, of course, I believe parental alienation exists. I've lived it. I can speak to you about my own experience and what that looks like. But just conceptually, think about your own life. Of course, people have acted adversarially, resentfully, and harmfully, maliciously, manipulatively, right? So there's varying degrees on the spectrum of what just even bad, hurt, painful, non-productive behavior can look like, and we're all complacent and guilty of some level and degree of that. But when you get to these extremes, that's a whole nother thing, and self-accountability and its relationship to how we're going to navigate through any of it, because when you can't even account for what truth is and your authentic behavior and what you're responsible for and what other people are responsible for, then it's a hard thing to navigate unless you got help from family, friends, community, and ultimately when the power comes in from the legal system, when we must use them. So I'm going to try to do more videos about parental alienation. I'm going to try to do one where I just talk about the basic history of mine and the actual physical things I went through that led from just her leaving to getting jurisdiction in Oregon, UCC, JEA, the lies, the narcissism, what I've learned, what I've benefited from in the YouTube community, knowledge is potential power, educating myself, and now trying to each one teach one. And so pass on what I've learned to anybody else than it benefits. To be a face for saying, hey, I was a victim of abuse from a female as a brown melanated man, and just to be the demographic that I am, to say I am this person and this happened to me, and to be accountable for that and put it into the barrel of statistics as we try to understand ourselves and each other. So I knew it felt so emasculating to be so hustled and abused by a narcissist, by, a potential borderline, a cluster B, and to try to be a good person, and as a man specifically, to feel so helpless on what you could do, what I could do with a woman who was physically violent and really, literally crazy, what you could do as a man to protect yourself, and the damage and danger we face by even self-protection is serious. And I want people to care. I want women to care. We need this conversation with women, especially to help protect the men, just as we want our men to be protecting our women, and nurturing that dynamic and the ebb and flow of hopefully symbiosis that we have with each other. And so that's always my goal, is peace with myself, with my community, with my polarities, with all that. Peace and love, to have balance and harmony. So, and in this case, awareness for parental alienation, because I think there's so many things that we now know about it. When I watch these psychologists speak, it's case in point. It's spot on for what I went through and what I think you could diagnose, especially with the extreme cases, that we could just prevent it from happening and have positive solutions that education and awareness can bring. Healthy ways of intervention that we can help people from themselves, or help two parties in need. Whatever it is, we want to be helping families, helping each other. We want the family courts to be helping families, whether parental alienation is involved or not. We want attorneys to be working ethically, not for money, and not to make the other side look bad, or try to go through the bank accounts just to see how you can paint the other person in a way that helps someone else. I mean, it's just, I get there's a time and a place, especially when people are lying and being sneaky and shady and unethical, because that's where I feel far more validated to try to show those things about her. And that's where, as somebody that's a victim of narcissists, borderlines, parental alienation, it becomes such a difficult path to navigate, because you end up accusing them of that which they're accusing you of, and it starts to be so much he said, she said, if people aren't going to do due diligence and strict scrutiny and really take the time just to sift it out, see if somebody is lying, because that is significant, and then hold judgment to it, hold people accountable. Like, I have so little rights that I've already signed away to the PC and to the evaluator, to the psychological exams I've had to go through, to coming in my house, to continuing to agree for the next 2 years to abide by whatever the parental coordinator says, much less if she wants to do more psych evals and whatever she wants, It's like I'm at the whim of these people, and at $250 an hour and $3,000 to $5,000 retainers just to have the services, and no protections for you. Everything in the contracts protect them and nothing protects you. I mean, just that nature of contract law to, like, hey, look out just for me. That's the epitome of narcissism and self-serving and imbalanced justice and imbalanced consideration. So that's where we're at. I'm out of money. I set up the PayPal account, love the number 4 Papa, POPPA at Gmail. That's the PayPal that we've been trying to get people to donate and just help. At this point, I don't even know. It's like, do I pay off the debt if people do continue to donate? And thanks to anybody who has, to give your earned money to somebody else, especially these people that don't know me. It's the incredible, inspiring thing about humanity that is why we do all of this, what the freedom movement's all about, and why we build and try to value diversity in different cultures and different nations, and celebrate each other, lift each other up. I'm not for the state, I'm not for the government. That's why I was like, if we want to help each other, do it through charity. Don't do it through forced obligation of the state or socialist programs and those kinds of things. So that's a conversation of its own. Totally, obviously off topic of parental alienation and to a degree of the family courts. But I'm going to keep talking about it. If it's helpful, maybe it's helpful for me just to keep articulating my experience, my understandings, the things I'm working out in my head. I don't claim to have it all figured out. And those are my hesitancies to speaking on it in general. I'm not a professional. I didn't go to school for psychology and psychotherapy. I did take psychology and psychotherapy to a degree when I was going to see Boulder, just because I didn't care about curriculum, and I took everything, and so I was minoring in so many different things basically before they were like, what are you doing? You gotta focus and pick something. So I'm not totally oblivious and have no experience or no study on the matter, especially having gone through it. I've spent countless hours studying narcissism, cluster Bs, borderlines, family law, the Black's law, legalese, all of it, my whole life. That's why it's like, I can't, that's not my passion. I'm not trying to spend the rest of my life doing that in these family courts. Even just to make a change, I've already put in so much time. I just need to live again. I need to frolic with my daughter in fields and get my feet muddy and go swim in the lakes and do some earthing and get some vitamin D from the sun and revitalize my adrenal glands that I fatigued and when I went into the hospital for stress and all the things that happen. Why I know why these parents would get suicidal and why the statistic for men for being suicidal. That's why I empathize and try to reach out. I want to tell other people I understand, because knowing people that really understood what I went through helped me, because there were a lot of people that they don't get it at all. Losing a child that's still alive, that's here, that you can't touch and embrace and hug and feel, and having a system that is against you. And so many of the women that I've hold dear to me in my community that didn't and still don't, I think to massive degrees, have any understanding, and I want them to understand just as I want to understand their experience and be able to nurture and comfort and console and commune with who they are, who you are, who we are as a people. That's what building together is. So that's what the love revolution is. That's what I try to run my life by and my conduct, and also what I try to hold other people accountable for as well. And that's why I'm open and I'm supportive of my judgments of the mother and of people in society. I think it's on us to hold people to standards and rights and wrong, and that comes from philosophies and declarations around judgment. So I'm here to continue to do that with you and with myself. I've been doing that for the majority of my life now, and I will continue to do so. I'll continue to fight for my relationship and my love and communion with my child, and set some of these out even just as testimony to her and to that she's loved, that not all parents that aren't involved in their children's lives are deadbeats or don't care. This is a complex world, and we're trying to navigate it the best that we can. That's what I believe for everybody, even those so-called cluster Bs and the adversaries in this world. That I truly do believe that they're doing what makes sense to them, the best they can. And the best I can do in response to that is continue to try to offer things that are going to help them be better, greater, brighter, more positive, more productive people. So, and not in the way that I judge them, but in what truly is the most greatest, grandest vision of themselves for their soul and their spirit, as their relationship deems from their creator. So I love you, I support you, I acknowledge you, I see you, I honor you. Peace to you, all of our ancestors, our families, our loved ones, our children, especially the babies, and peace to the so-called adversaries, the attorneys, the judges, the significant others, the exes. We send love to them too, obviously. Maybe not so obviously. Maybe that's why we need to declare it. So I send peace to the world. I hope we can come up with some solutions. I think that starts with open communication and dialogue, nonviolent communication, and active listening. So let's listen to each other, make sure we hear what each other are saying, and truly think about it before we react and respond. And then let's speak with love. My name is MCAD, aka Rad Dad, and I send peace to the world. Let's all raise awareness as much as we can about parental alienation and offer simple solutions. YouTube it, there's some great stuff out there by people that truly are experts and have clinical, scientific, statistical, experiential evidence to show things that I think ultimately can help us and our families. So peace and love. Be good to yourself and be good to the world. One love.
It's all coming together right here now. It's all coming together right here now. It's all coming together right here. Who's that? It's love. Can you feel it coming through that conscious revolutionary music? Yeah, you can feel it in your veins.
Hey, give thanks for those who donated and ask for ways to donate and support and help the cause. I set up a PayPal account for donations, so if you want to donate, you can do so at lovefurpapa@gmail.com. That's our PayPal account, and that's love, the number 4, POPPA @gmail.com. If you got $1 to spare, every dollar helps. We just want to say thank you to those who have supported in every way that they have. Peace and love.